Okay.
Good morning. The Finance and Economic Development Committee meeting is 9 o'clock. Let's roll call, please.
Mike.
Here.
Laura.
Here.
Here.
Ron.
Here.
Marty.
Here. Order is declared. We're looking at continuing approval of the agenda. Anything to add or remove? Anything to add or remove from this agenda? I'll be looking for a motion to accept as presented. Martin moves to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Motion carried. Item number 3, public comments.
Actually, can we hang on 1 second?
Okay.
Laura, I'm going to switch microphones from one mic to the other mic, and I want Mike Berlin to do a test. No, I have a different mic here, so. Okay, so Mike, why don't you speak now and give a test 1, 2, 3.
This one?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah. No, just speak into it.
1, 2, 3.
Is that better?
That's a lot better.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We just wanted to make sure. I see you holding your head occasionally there. So.
I know. I try to listen harder.
Okay, this is better.
That sounds great.
I'm about 2 feet from the unit here, so it should be good. Public comment. Anybody out there?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Would you identify yourself, please, and present yourself?
My name is Anne Chartier, and my phone number is 715-682-9418.
Okay, go ahead.
You want me to start?
Yes.
Good morning. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. As I already said, my name is Anne Chartier, and I live at 1203 6th Avenue West. And I'm in District 4, and my county board supervisor is Bill Metzinger, and I called him yesterday to give him a heads up that I would be calling in today to express my deep concern about a motion that was passed or that carried back in February. And so here I am to tell you how I feel. I am calling to ask that you rescind the motion of February 26th, basically awarding the $500,000 that Enbridge awarded the county when Ashland County agreed to quit claim the Mellon property, so it could potentially so Enbridge could potentially build its Enbridge Line 5 pipeline. When I read this decision in the February minutes, I could not believe my eyes. I was surprised beyond belief that this committee had agreed to set aside the money so law enforcement would have necessary funds to quell protesters. It seems particularly inappropriate considering that Administrator Schroeder had submitted a long list of county needs. In light of all that has happened in this country since that February meeting, the fact that this committee would have deemed spending the $500,000 on law enforcement in lieu of other identified priorities is particularly appalling, though I would have been opposed then before everything that's happened. I am a water protector, and I have and will continue to demonstrate in opposition to whatever endangers our precious resource. But we have a long history of peaceful opposition that has had positive outcomes in our region. I am well aware of my good fortune of living in such a beautiful part of the world. I am also thankful to live in a democracy that, though flawed and corrupted by money, allows me to speak my mind freely and make my opinions known. I am impressed by the dedication and commitment of our local elected officials that make it possible for democracy to work, and I thank you very much for your part. Please rescind the motion that would give the $500,000 to law enforcement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ann.
Hi, Eric Lindell.
Go ahead, Eric.
Hi, my name is Eric Lindell. I live in District 6 at 204.5 West Main Street, Apartment 207. I would echo the sentiments that were just shared. Allocating the $500,000, especially with COVID, which is going to rescind potentially your potential tax revenue, simply to law enforcement. All the protests I've been at against Enbridge Pipeline have been peaceful. There is no need at this point, especially when we don't even know, is the pipeline even going to get built? So far, Line 5, they just lost in Michigan. There's no, to me, that money should be put aside for needs such as health and human services, other projects down the road. Just allocating it to law enforcement, I think was premature, and I would hope that you will rescind the motion. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Yes, this is Jan Penn, and I live down in Highbridge, 38792 Poppy Road, and my supervisor is Marty Vitek. I would echo what's been said and would ask that you rescind the motion that was made in February to provide this money to the Sheriff's Department. As many of you know, people in Ashland County can be pretty opinionated, but there is a long history back to my knowledge in the early 70s of people being opposed to projects, opposed to issues that came across, and never has there been a violent protest in Ashland County. The people in our area, as you know, are pretty peace-loving folks. I am a retired nurse practitioner, and as such, I am deeply concerned about the well-being of the people in Ashland County. With the current global crisis that we're facing with the pandemic, I am very concerned about the work that is being done by our social service department and our health department, our public health nurses. They are just working overtime to try and help families in Ashland County who are experiencing the fallout of the pandemic. I would strongly support considering looking at that money being set aside for services to the people of the county who are struggling at this point. It is going to affect the tax base, the pandemic, and so the safety network that has already been crushed by the cutback in federal and state funds to the county is going to be felt even to a greater extent. So I really thank you. I know that our supervisors, our elected officials are cognizant of the extreme conditions under which we're living and the stress of, I can't imagine what you guys are going to do trying to set a county budget as it is. I thank you. I support our administrator's proposal for putting that into other needs. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, we have next public comment is by Abby Fergus.
Hi, thank you for taking these comments. I'm also asking that the decision about allocating that $500,000 for law enforcement be rescinded. I want to echo the need for this money elsewhere, whether it's the front lines of response to COVID, as Jan is suggesting, or many other needs that were alluded to being identified. I could imagine one of these needs is our failing water treatment systems that are constantly flooding and rain events and polluting Chequamegon Bay. I want to address what I had heard originally was the justification, and this is just through the grapevine, but I hear language about this money for law enforcement being awarded in case quote Standing Rock situation arises, and I think we need to look at what actually happened at Standing Rock, and the violence that happened were at the hands of law enforcement, and the situation was escalated by the investment in all this riot gear for police and law enforcement, and the pepper spray and the sound cannons and the water that were all used against people, some on their own land, others allies, when they stood up to protect the water. So if you want escalation, putting these weapons in the hands of law enforcement that is supposed to protect our community is the route that happens with. As other people have said, we've been opposing Line 5 in different ways in a heightened manner the past year, and none of these actions have disrupted the well-being of our community. We're here trying to protect the safety of our community. So there are many reasons why pouring $500,000 into our local law enforcement instead of all the actual needs is just an unreasonable decision. I also just want to bring up the need for the public to be more involved in all of these committee and board meetings. It's not a very effective way to communicate opportunities for public input, only putting them on Ashland's website. It's pretty easy to run social media pages and not put it on citizens to know when agendas are going to be posted to the website. So I'm asking that the decision be rescinded, that the public be far more involved in this decision making, and that these funds instead go to the many needs we have up here to protect water and human health. Thank you for the time.
Okay, Ella Severson.
Hi, my name's Ella Severson. I live at 813 6th Avenue West. And I'm also calling in to ask that the February motion to allocate that money to law enforcement be rescinded. I think it's a really important time not to be pushing back at protesters, but to really listening to what your community has to say. And right now we're telling you that we have a lot of needs in this community that this money could be spent on. Not least of which is water protection and water management, which might in future include, cleaning up spills from this very pipeline that we are opposing. So in essence, I think this money should not be given to law enforcement for any reason. There are much greater needs and things that can be done to protect public safety and health in our community. And I want that motion to be rescinded and that money to be spent elsewhere. Thank you.
Again, if you're making public comments on the computer, you can raise your hand. If you're basically on a phone, you can press star.
Hi, I'm calling in by phone. Can you hear me?
Yes. The next public comment, it might, can you pronounce this person's name? Huh?
No, I cannot.
Okay, Winnie Pazatabi. I apologize for doing that to your name. You are muted, but you can start speaking.
All right, Bonjour, Buena Pushtabe, Indigo.
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm calling in for the public testimony. I'm calling in over phone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Just wait your turn. Press star nine.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm on Madeline Island, so I can't hear you very well. I hope my connection is coming in all right. Thank you for your time this morning.
Can you wait your turn? Wait till you're called on. Okay, continue with previous speaker.
All right. Wayna Pushtabe Indigu. That's how my name is spelled. Wayna Pushtabe, or how it's said. My English name is Sandy Goki, and I live in Weequahdong is what we call it here, and that's at the bay in Ashland. So you have motion to give all of the revenue from the sale of land from Mellon to law enforcement for possible protests that occur because of this land sale. Now, this is a foreign corporation. They're from across the border, and we are tax-paying citizens here. You know, I know there's misconstrued notions that Indians don't pay taxes, but let me show you my tax bill and prove it. Now, I am a tax-paying citizen who is liable to be shot at. And as we've seen with Jason Pirro, we will be shot at. As we've seen with Standing Rock, we will be shot at. As we've seen with George Floyd protesters, we will be shot at. Now, I am paying to be shot at. So, you know, maybe give us a fair chance here and allocate half of that $500,000 to local organizations that are protecting water. You know, a couple that come to mind is the Pinocchio Hills Education Project, the Bad River Watershed Association. So, you know, if we're all about unbiased and equal treatment here, if you're gonna give half to shoot at us, maybe you could give us half to protect ourselves. You know, that seems fair. We aren't asking for any of these pepper bullets. We aren't asking for any of these water cannons. What we can do though is, you know, possibly get gas masks so we don't choke on pepper spray. Maybe we can get some plywood for shields against rubber bullets, because that's what comes when you allocate this money to riot gear. That's what happens, is they use it. If you got it, you use it. And if you allow them to purchase that equipment, they will use it on us. So, you know, have some equal treatment here and possibly give some to us, the tax-paying citizens here. With the environment that we're in for the last couple of months here, the distrust of officers has risen nationwide and globally. But that distrust has been there for a long time for us, because my dad even has taken a ride in a squad car and gotten to the jail with broken arms, broken legs. We've been brutalized by police for far longer than what has been on record. And by allowing them to purchase equipment to further brutalize us is inhumane and fiscally irresponsible. Thank you.
Eric Andrews is up next.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, my name is Eric Andrews. I am a Ashland city resident. I live at 511 Lakeshore Drive East. I'm speaking today to thank you for allowing me to comment on this and to request that the motion for the quitclaim deed funds of $500,000 to be rescinded. I believe that when the discussion was being made of whether or not to accept the quitclaim deed funds several months ago, a lot of discussion was made specifically about repairing aging public infrastructure, especially the water treatment plant. And I find that it would be fiscally irresponsible to take those funds and place them to a short-term, one-time expenditure rather than spending on the litany of needs facing our aging infrastructure right now. I also want to say that I agree with many of the other comments already made by other commenters today, especially the woman who spoke just before me. I agree with the things they say, and I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Donna Churis, and if you're on the phone, press *9 to raise your hand to be called upon. *9 if you're on the phone, or if you're on the computer, press the raise your hand. And go ahead, Donna. Dana Churis, you're muted. You have to unmute your computer. There you go.
Okay, thank you. My name is Dana Chernus, 86495 Lenawee Road, Herbster, Bayfield County. But it is not lost on me that we are all living on Anishinaabe territory. So Bayfield, Ashland County, I believe, we're all relevant in speaking here today. I am wanting to go on the record requesting that the decision to provide revenue from the land sale in Mellon to law enforcement be rescinded. It's kind of unfathomable that this would be a discussion right now, that we're looking at catering to the needs of a foreign corporation with such an awful track record. And we're prioritizing that over the health and safety and well-being of all of the citizens of this area, and even more so our Indigenous neighbors who have done nothing but fight for their right to exist. It is unfathomable that this is even a discussion, and I would like to strongly encourage this committee to rescind this decision. Thank you for your time.
Okay. On the phone, phone number ending in 3777. 3777.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Awesome. I apologize earlier. I was trying to balance farm chores while listening in, and my connection got spotty, so I think I was talking out of turn, and I apologize, and thank you for the chance to talk with you now. I am up on Madeline Island in La Pointe. I am at address 3239 Big Bay Road. I have been a resident of the Chequamegon Bay area for the past 5 years, and recently moved up to La Pointe for the purposes of growing food and having a much deeper connection with the lake. I imagine you can't hear it over the phone, but I'm about 10 feet from the shore. I am currently living and farming right along the shoreline of Lake Superior, and it is such a gift to be living in the same watershed with you all. And I thank you so much for your lifetimes of advocacy and protection and love that you have given this place. I grew up in Madison, and I moved here specifically for the community that is around here. Even though as a transgender person, it's a lot more lonely and dangerous for me to be up here, but my love of the lake and the community that we have created here is just incredibly strong. Like I believe 8 other people who have come before, I am calling in today asking you to rescind your decision to give the $500,000 to law enforcement, or from Enbridge to law enforcement. The angle that I would like to make today is, like everybody else, an angle from the lake, because I am on Madeline Island, I am seeing people from all over the world and all over the country currently coming to be here in this place because they love our community. That is both a very big economic opportunity for us that we rely on, but it is also an incredible risk in a global pandemic. I'm currently growing food, and we are struggling to keep up in a way where we can be making sure that all of our community's needs are met. I strongly advocate that we allocate as much money as possible into food sovereignty efforts as well as community health, especially as we continue to be a hotbed for tourism activity that we rely on. The more money that we can keep in our local economy right now, the more sovereign we will be able to be and the more resilient we will be for the coming fall and winter and summer after this. All we have is each other and the lake, and that is such a gift, and it is a duty that we must protect with all of our hearts. Thank you to all of the water protectors out there. Thank you for the chance to call in. I'm so grateful in many ways that these meetings are being held over Zoom so that I can be with you all in my break between feeding chickens. Although I would like to echo what I believe Abby Fergus said, it was very difficult for me to find information about how to participate in this. I spent 5 days of research and just found out at 11 p.m. And right now we're all just trying to grow enough food for the community for this coming winter. So I feel like the more that the county can be doing to make these meetings and this information accessible, I think that would be incredibly welcome. Thank you for your time today. I have to hop off and go feed some animals, but I wish you all the best.
All right, if you're on the computer, raise your hand if you want to speak. If you're on the phone, start. Let's see. Jesse rose her hand. So Jesse, go ahead.
Hi, I think that's me. My name's Janice Shortley. Unless there was a Jesse. Is there a Jesse?
Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. I live at 209 5th Avenue East in Ashland, and I am here to echo the comments of many others that I would like to see the motion made in February to allocate $500,000 from the Enbridge land claim to law enforcement. I'd like to see that motion rescinded. I will keep my comments short because of all the other voices that have echoed a lot of my concerns. But I want to remind the council today that criminalization of conflict is often how our society deals with contention and conflict, and I think that is why our society is in a lot of the difficult situations that we find ourselves in this day and age, and that I understand that it is hard to deal with a variance of opinions as elected officials, but that I really would like to see more opportunities for community dialogue so that we can figure out where this money should be best spent and figure out how we're going to deal with Enbridge trying to reroute a pipeline that would still run through the watershed and threaten our water source that we all rely on. So I ask that this motion be rescinded, and I ask that more community dialogue space is provided so that conflict can be dealt with outside of criminalization. Thank you, and I yield the rest of my time.
Okay, I don't see any other, okay, hang on, waiting around.
You got Frank up there yet too, right?
Huh?
Was Frank?
Yeah, I don't see Frank's.
I don't know where he was.
I don't see his name or his raised hand. Anybody else have public comment? Frank raised your hand. There you go. Okay, go ahead, Frank.
My name is Frank Kane. I live at 619 17th Avenue West in Ashland, Wisconsin. And I would like to add my voice to the call for rescinding a motion to money over to the Sheriff's Department. I think that people have mentioned very worthwhile causes that money could be spent on. It struck me as kind of a knee-jerk reaction. The $500,000 would be allocated to the Sheriff's Department to prepare for whatever is thought that was going to happen out on the pipeline. Obviously, we need to have more public information. We need to have more public meetings. There are a lot of things that can go on. What I would like to see happen to that money is that it would just be put into an account and used as needed. If we give the money to any department in the county, they'll find a way to spend it. And if the money is spent, whatever is spent on will have to be used. And we certainly, people have addressed the water treatment plant and other services that the county is in desperate need of. Right now, the money is a windfall in a sense in that we gave up some property for it. I think that money should be set aside and used as needed. We may have another surge coming our way in terms of a pandemic. We may have more drastic needs for that money to enhance the Sheriff's Department. Now, to me, it would seem to be very prudent to put it in an account that can be used as needed, as opposed to a committee just saying we're going to take the money and give it to the Sheriff's Department and prepare for something that we don't even know what's going to happen. Thank you very much.
Mike.
The person that spoke from Madeline Island, did we get her name?
No, we did.
I did not.
I don't think she was her name. Is she still there? Did we get her name?
Is the person that spoke from Island Island, can you give us your name?
They're not here anymore, but their name is Riley Kaiser.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's it for public comments, Chairperson.
All right, thank you for your comments. And we'll continue on to the approval of the finance minute meetings. We all had a chance to take a look at these.
Yep.
Do we have any corrections, additions, or deletions? If we have no correction, additions, or deletions, I'd like to see a motion to approve as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Looking for a second.
Ronald, second that.
We have a second by Marty Vitak. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried.
Chairperson?
Yes, sir.
I might make a recommendation to move to item number 7, since we have a number of people in the parties who are interested in this. I propose addressing that issue next, so people don't have to sit through the rest of the meeting if they don't want to listen to the rest of the meeting. That basically is the recommendation for the Mellon claim deed money.
I'll make a motion that we move number 7 up to number 5.
This is Laura Nadler. I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. By moving.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carried. Let's go to item number 7, Mellon money recommendation.
Okay, the county received $500,000 from the city of Mellon for giving a quick deed to a piece of property that we owned since the 90s. At the finance meeting in 2020, the administrator brought up possible uses for this money to purchase capital equipment for which has been on hold due to budget limitations. After discussion, a motion was made not to spend the money but to retain it in the bank for possible uses, which would include law enforcement needs. This issue came up at the June meeting, but since it is not on the agenda, we delayed discussing it due to lack of public notice till today. Budgets are approved by a full county board every November. We have a budget adjustment amendment policy which guides the county in spending money outside the approved budget. Since this money was received after approved budget, it has not been allocated into any budget or nor has it been spent. Given the unsure budget period coming up with questions about sales tax, timber sales, shared state revenue, and increased costs, the administrator's recommendation that we keep bringing this money in the bank and allocate it during the normal budget cycle. If a need comes up that is outside of the budget, we have a process which would approve budget adjustments. I have included the minutes from the meeting from 2/26/20 and the budget adjustment policy. With that, I would seek a motion, move to retain the mail-in money deed for possible allocation during the approval process.
I have a question. The suggested motion is to move and retain the rental property deed money for possible allocation in the motion approval process. Given that we likely have a number of years where there's going to be a shortfall for the county budget, is there a place that you know that money can be allocated so that if we need some of it this year, we could use it, but then we can set the balance in 2-3 years? I'm new to the finance committee. I'm not familiar with the county debt service well enough right now to see what that's on, or also.
It's hard to hear him because he's not by a microphone.
Okay. Pat's going to come up over by the table here. You can just sit right there.
My question is to the administrator. I'm new to the finance committee this year, so at the moment I don't have detailed information on the debt service or future capital needs going out perhaps for the next 5 years. If we set this aside as stated in the suggested motion, can some of that money be set aside for years beyond this rather than all being used? Is that your suggestion?
Yes, it's basically going to be retained in the bank. We currently have like, it'll be just added to the bank balance we have in Northern State Bank. And if we always develop a balanced budget. If in the balanced budget process we find we have a shortage of revenue, the county board can allocate from our fund balance in order to fill the gap. So just basically, I'm just saying, put it in the bank, we'll leave it in the bank, and if we need it during the budget process, we would allocate it as needed. That could be it could be 5 years from now, it could be never. You know, so we're basically just saying, just leave it in the bank and allocate as we need it.
I'll make a motion to retain the Midland property deed money for possible allocation during the budget approval process by putting it into the general fund to be allocated in the future as needed.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
We have a motion on the floor, looking for a second. We have a second,
Ron.
Marty. We have questions?
I did have a question, but I will second that motion first. This is Laura Negro.
Marty already seconded.
Oh, sorry, I can't hear him.
Okay.
All right, at least, would it be okay if I spoke then?
Go ahead.
I want to say that this, I have spoke to other former committee members on this, and it is on me because I did not amend the minutes to take that piece off. It was not specifically for law enforcement. Yes, if there were overtime needs with the law enforcement, that was brought up. But there was also COVID issues. There was if Health and Human Services had extra issues. And I want to apologize and make sure that everyone knows I would have never let anyone, there would have been a fit, because with the perception that there would be riot gear or anything like that, our sheriff has never ever brought up anything like that. So that's on me. I will take that. my recollection and a couple other committee members' recollection was that it was just supposed to be put into that fund or into that revolving, let me see, I got some notes here. So, because I want it right this time, because it's already, it's already past a point, and anybody that was there yesterday knows what I think on a lot of these things. It was for a large contingency balance. That was if any of our departments, because we saw COVID coming, came into having some issues. We wanted to have that sitting there because that was the easiest way if there would be COVID in the jail and we had to put everybody in separate spaces. We don't have that in our budget. It was the easiest way to do that. And I am so sorry I did not get that corrected in the minutes, and so sorry that you all felt you had to come today to say something about it. But I appreciate you holding us to our feet to the fire. So thank you. And that's what I have to say.
Thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Abstention? Motion carried. Thank you. Continuing on back to the timber revenue. Shortfall.
Okay, this is a non-action item, but basically due to the closing of Verso paper mill operations at a couple big plants, the price of timber has taken a hit. Contracts that we had were probably not going to be fulfilled. Every year, for those of you new on the committee, the county budget is supplanted or backfilled with anywhere from $600,000 to $750,000 of timber revenue that comes into the general fund, just like tax levy dollars. And because of that, we were looking at maybe a $300,000 or $500,000 decrease, or $300,000 decrease for this year. Forestry came up with a plan, an emergency plan, which we basically approved between the administrator and the chairman of the county board to basically take some timber that we were going to harvest next spring and harvest it this spring. And this is the difference between hardwood and softwood management. We are not robbing from the future. The letter is in your packet, so you had the opportunity to read it. I won't be going over that. And we have, I did put a link in there to the map also, which basically gives a map of the county forest lands. And that's just for your information. In this case, it's this area down in the southern part of the county. So you see this greenish area, this light green area, it's county forest land. We manage approximately 40,000 acres. So there is no action or policy being set by the committee at this time. We're basically just highlighting this for you to be aware of it. We're hoping that our sales of our softwood and supplanting that versus hardwood will be close to balancing the budget for this year. And with that, I'll just take questions if you have questions about Chris's letter. Okay.
Pretty quiet.
Thank you. You can go on.
Go on to the sales tax numbers. I had a handout given to me as I came in to the building today. Do all the board members have a copy of this, or just us in the attendance? It's not in the packet. I copied my electronic packet. So.
Yeah, so your packet actually held this copy actually was in the packet. If you look on the screen, on the last page, you can see the last payment here for June, $108,000. This is again another issue during the initial stages of the pandemic. The state basically revenue department plus a division called Forward Analytics. This is the links are in your packet. Feel free, you can look at those. I will not be going through there. I'm assuming that you read this stuff ahead of time. So the packet, as you can see, for sales tax, the state had estimated we'd be anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000 short of sales tax this year. And they gave that estimates in March and April. So that basically created a flurry of how would we balance this year's budget, say nothing about next year's budget. These are the actual numbers here, and so I basically took the sheet that you have that Lori handed out, but I put it into a spreadsheet form that basically gives cumulative totals. And so in this case, we have a cumulative of $661,000. And if you look on this spreadsheet, that basically is above what has been happening. So we may see, in talking with the area administrators, we may see a decrease or maybe not quite a full generation of sales tax. The biggest sales tax revenues are, you can see here, are in August and September, 130, 170. And then, of course, there's some Christmas money that comes in December. So staff will be monitoring this, but we can't really, given the uncertainties of this, we can't really adjust this year's budget based on the numbers, which the state said we're going to be $100,000 to $200,000 short, and they're not. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. You can hear about it, and you can feel free to research on the Forward Analytics site if you want to look at some predictive and drop in basically different numbers to try to balance it. And again, non-action item, just for your information. And any questions? Okay, thank you.
Continue on to financial reports. Financials.
Again, this is just a non-action item. This is basically the monthly financials as of May 31st. We will probably end up with June's probably next week sometime. And this is a non-action item. This is a report that if you have questions, you can direct staff to research questions about it.
Any comments?
And this, the packet includes all the information. We're trying to increase transparency for the citizens, so they can look at this stuff also, so they have a better idea of what the company is with their money.
Is there anything that either as an administrator or that you're looking for out of this committee in terms of looking at this document? No. Any responsibility that we have to look through this to provide oversight or questions or guidance?
I think since you're on the finance committee, I think it'd be wise in the long run. I don't know how we operated in the past on this. I think it'd be good for people in the finance committee to look at this, and if they have questions, if they have abnormalities, to bring it to our attention, to help out with that. I will say, as your administrator, there's all the different things that I do. I don't spend a great deal of time looking at this in detail. If somebody had the skills to do that, I would much appreciate it.
So in my 8 years on the Ashland City Council, on the one hand, when we went through the budget, we, in the early years, would go through every line of every department and had extended discussion. Over time, we transitioned to having staff doing more of the detail, and then during the budget meetings and the report of the budget, we would spend less time on the details because staff had spent more time working at finding a way to balance the budget. So there's a balance between us delving into lots of detail, some would call micromanaging, and then looking at the bigger picture. So from your perspective, what are you comfortable with? What are you looking for out of this committee as you go through that process on our engagement in level of detail that's constructive and helpful versus probably micromanaging?
Yeah, so I guess on the finance committee, I would think more on an individual basis. I would think we need to form a public meeting because we're not going to have answers. But as a committee member, if you see something in there that you say, is this right? You know, I'd be happy to take questions on it.
So details more outside of the meeting then.
Yeah,
thank you.
We're not going to have any answers today. There are some background noises happening. If people can mute their phones or mute their computers, if they during this time period, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Moving on to the CARES funding. COVID-19.
Okay. Basically, this is federal money. The CARES money is money that the administration and the Congress basically allocated the state. They allocated like $2 billion or something to the state of Wisconsin. That money got allocated to the governor's sole discretion to do with what he wants outside the legislative approval process. Well, 300 million of that basically came to the county governments and local governments. So every township, every county, every city has the availability to claim dollars that are COVID related. So our allocation on this is $259,000. In your packet, I basically put the routes to recovery guidance document. These are the items which are available for reimbursement that we basically are expending, that we can basically get reimbursed that we need to spend for this. I'm going to pull the spreadsheet here. So the state is very particular about what they reimburse for. The staff, we have to basically have confidence that what we spend, we will get reimbursed for, because otherwise it's a problem because we have unallocated money. The basic premise of this is it's money that is not budgeted and it's directly related to CARES funding. The reason we're bringing this to the finance committee's attention is because eventually we'll have to have a budget amendment, because this was by its very definition unbudgeted money. And so when we get done with this fall, I'm going to come back and have you basically put this into the budget, because we didn't do that. So you can see what we're buying here. We're basically buying hand sanitizers, $7,000 of surgical masks. We're spending $45,000 to $50,000 on our dispatch center. So basically our dispatch center is inside of the jail. If the jail or when the jail gets COVID, we can't put employees into the jail for dispatch. So we're basically buying some remote equipment that we can move it outside of the jail, still within the law enforcement center, but we would not be in a contaminated space. And we did get approval from the governor's office to do that. We've been buying sneeze guards. Because we have an outside court counsel, we are claiming any fees from Max Lindsay that are COVID related. We did buy a $40,000 UV light system for disinfecting the jail. And that basically is something that we put into a room, it's automatic, spends 45 minutes in a room, and it disinfects everything that the light touches. Hospitals use this. we're looking at getting some e-listing machines, video conference stuff, computers for remote work. So again, I want you to be aware of this because in the fall, I don't want you to be like, what do you mean with this budget amendment? You spent all this money like. So you are aware of it, and if you have any questions about it, please, I'll take questions on this.
Any questions from the board?
Earlier, before the meeting, I asked the administrator if microphones for the county board meetings would be a possibility, especially if we met at once outside of this room. In fact, we looked at.
Yep, and so we're going to look into that. Pat said he would actually email me something if he has ideas on that too. That's something I'm going to have to run up to. I'm going to have to run up the tree to the governor's office to see what kind of system, portable system would we utilize if we have, if the next county board meeting, for those of you who weren't aware, we addressed this at the executive meeting on Monday. We're looking at the American Inn, the Breading Center, possibly the Armory, possibly the Baptist Church. What else were we looking at? I can't remember. So anyway, so staff is investigating that, and we'll come back to the executive committee with a plan to basically figure out how we can host both. The site has to be big enough for social distance, but also have the technology available for the public and for county board members who are going to be remote. So it has to serve a dual purpose. So, all right, that's all I have for that one.
Thank you. Fleet planning.
Okay, this is an action item. And I've been thinking about this since I started here. As we look forward past the current fiscal issue related to COVID, as well, we will well face budget limits on our general levy dollars through the levy limit law. As is noted elsewhere in today's meeting, we are financing what used to be funded with general levy dollars. Well, who's ever speaking, can they please mute their phone? Please mute your phone if you're not currently speaking.
Ron, I'm sorry, Clark. I think that because Ron's listening on his phone, I think the speaker might be feeding back into his phone. So there you go. Thank you, Ron.
Actually, I muted Ron. So Ron, you won't be able to speak till I unmute you again. I'll unmute you as soon as I'm done speaking. I apologize for that. We are financing what used to be funded with general levy dollars and now being funded with debt levy. These things, such as road construction, equipment, squads, radios, are now funded with debt, and I don't see that stopping until the levy limit law is changed. There's a different way to fund local county government. We spent $86,000 reimbursing employees for mileage last year. When we get done with COVID, we most likely be going back to some sort of employee travel reimbursements. This was done with general levy dollars, which needs to go to growth for things such as inmate care, court-appointed attorneys, employee salaries, benefits, utilities, repairs, other expenses which continue to rise each year. One way to move expenses off the general levy is to purchase our own fleet and stop paying employees to use their own cars. I've talked to a number of different counties and they're doing this. My recommendation is we put into the capital expense budget this year a few cars which employees could use instead of driving their own cars. We would utilize the state purchasing pool to purchase these vehicles or on bid. This is a website that has different makes and models for purchases. Due to the substantial discount on these vehicles, a number of counties are buying them, keeping them for 2 years, trading them in for almost what they paid for them. So the upgrades are normally around $1,000 to $2,000. Once we buy these vehicles, our general levy expenses for travel will go down, which would help fund operations. And so I'm basically just, this will be going part of the budgetary process, but I wanted to pull this out because this is kind of a change. We want to basically start, I'm thinking about just starting off with like a couple, 3 vehicles for HHS. They're the most prominent users of mileage because by their very nature, we have people that are on the road almost all the time doing what they do. Child protection, social services, social workers, CSP, we're out there a lot. And so my recommendation would be to, in the budget, put fleet vehicles in order to sustain the general fund, which doesn't go up, obviously. And with that, I'll take questions.
Chair Berlin, could I speak?
Oh, Laura, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to speak in support of this. I know the city police department is doing this. I've spoke with Bill and he said they have, the cars are great. It's nice to have, the maintenance in there and practically almost, yes, it's a few $1,000s to upgrade, but they have kind of eliminated a big piece of their budget there by doing this. So I'm worried about people transporting citizens during their job time with their own personal cars and don't want to put them in jeopardy either, and would like to see this implemented. So I will make the motion to develop the fleet vehicles for Ashland County. And put that in the budget.
Pat, you have a question?
I'll second the motion and then I have some questions.
Okay, Pat, second the motion, but he has questions.
The questions are for the administrator. This will increase the debt levy, decrease the general levy. Do you have an idea of how the increase in the debt levy will compare to the decrease in the general levy?
The general levy will not decrease because the other expenses we have continue to go up. Our general levy pretty much is where it's at. So I don't see the general levy decrease.
I just mean for this particular item, we're going to increase the debt levy by whatever this amount turns out to be. And then the general levy will be smaller by whatever amount than it otherwise would be by doing this. So my sense is from looking at the numbers, and used cars are cheap right now because the rental companies are unloading a lot of them. To me, it would seem like just from a budget perspective, the shift makes sense because of the levy limit law, but it also seems like, at least for the foreseeable future, this will actually be more cost effective for the county.
Yes, this will basically be a lot more cost effective because right now we're paying employees to own their own cars, and some, and be frank, there are some people probably are making their car payments by mileage off the county.
Right, so overall, this is more cost effective, I think, for the county for the time being. So then my other questions are related to the maintenance of the vehicle. Does the county have any capacity to do some of the maintenance on this?
So what we've been, from a financial and maintenance standpoint, we have trialed this over the last few months. We have a vehicle we got from the highway department. They were not utilizing it very much. It's a Ford sedan, sits right outside the courthouse here. And we put that into a calendar, and so employees can check that car out. And so we have health and human services employees will, if they're going to Superior, they'll drive over here, check that car out, take it. It's used. Conservation is using it for interns to do boat launch inspections for invasive species, so, and then what happens is the departments are charged so many cents per mile, and the highway department takes care of the fleet. So the expenses go through the highway department, and then if there is availability for them to do some mild or small maintenance, it's a savings to the county. And so I anticipate, and I've talked to the highway commissioner about this, he basically is fine with kind of being the repository, or let's say the owner of these vehicles, from a physical standpoint as far as the, what does HHS know when they're making a decision concerning the maintenance on the car? This way, if somebody's experienced making decisions on maintenance. And so, yeah, so those are all developed as we go forward. We'll solidify those and develop policies and procedures that will, transcend any one employee.
And then insurance and liability, so the county's insurance costs presumably would be going up some with this shift?
No, we don't have individual issues. The issue that Laura brought up, which is a very key issue. So we have social workers who go out for child protection and with their own vehicle, and they're picking up a child and putting it into their personal car. That is not only a risk to the individual, it's a risk to the county. That scares me actually. That's one of the main reasons to do this, is so we don't have these employees traveling with children in their cars.
Yeah, and I totally get that from my previous employment. That's why I asked.
Yeah, thank you.
Could we unmute Ron?
Yes, sorry, thank you for the reminder. All right, Ron. I appreciate your reminder on that. I forgot him yesterday. So.
So on the purchase of these vehicles, these are going to go through the state purchase program?
So what would happen, so this link on this thing is it's VendorNet, and most of the counties are doing that. Given we would also want to allow a bid process for local car dealers to bid on it too. We'd say, we're looking for, this 4-wheel drive SUV, because all things being equal, I'd much rather buy it locally if I could than buy it from the state purchasing contract, which who knows where it comes from. So we would try to work with our local dealers also.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor with a second. Any further questions?
No, on that last point, I just want to, I know the city ends up going through, I think Ford, the Ford dealership is the one that their vehicles end up coming through. So it seems like working through some of our local companies does work out.
I know Ford, also that Better Tribe, Ford gets most of it because they have a commercial program, and that's what would follow it. Who's MJ? So I see a light on there.
They just don't, whoever MJ is, they don't have their phone muted. So
Okay.
if they have background noise, it just pops up.
Okay. Well, once again, if there's no other questions, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carried. Thank you. Timelines, we talked a little bit about that yesterday.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about yesterday, so I'm gonna just get this next spreadsheet up. So there's a couple things to talk about with the budget. The first thing I want to discuss is the timelines. We've had a
It's live. Move the screen.
if you're not talking, please mute your phone or mute your computer. Thank you. Finance Committee meets today. We basically would give the direction to the county clerk's office. They would distribute the schedule of benefits and the budget forms to the department heads. Looks like that's not going to happen tomorrow because we had a server crash yesterday afternoon at 3, and so some of my documents are gone. This document is a little bit dated. I don't have the most recent one. And so we probably will send that out on Monday. We also will email and request from the organizations that receive funds from the county. So there's a number of organizations that request money from the county, nonprofits and other organizations. We will send that information out this week so that we can get their requests in for consideration. Some of these numbers are going to be question marks, but we would receive drafts back from the departments in late August. Sometime in August, we'll receive the equalized value report from the Department of Revenue. And so the equalized value is your net new construction. So when I say the general levy doesn't go up by levy limit laws, in a county like this, it pretty much is flat. We might get a general levy increase of $20,000, over the course of the year. If you have a big growing county, the levy limits aren't so bad because you have natural growth and natural population increase. That's why the levy limit law really affects poor, rural, as far as population stagnant counties. So that will happen sometime in August. I would hope to get that number in because that basically solidifies where we're going to be for levy. We would introduce the budget from the department heads most likely at the end of August. September, we'll get our insurance numbers. We are, the county, for those of you, just for information, we are a self-funded insurance operation up until an incident of $60,000 or more. And after that, it's a reinsurance. So if we have a case that you go in and a person has cancer and they start off, getting 10,000 here, 10,000 there, 10,000 there. Eventually, when it gets over 60, we get reimbursed from the reinsurance company, comes back to our pool, and we have a pool of money that is managed by BPA, Benefit Plan Administrations, and they basically help us figure out how much we should keep in our bucket. And these are actuarials, people a lot smarter than we are. So we get our shared revenue report in September. So shared revenue is money that comes from the state. And we would, that's one number we're gonna have to watch very closely. The state, as you're well aware, is anticipating a $2 billion shortfall in their state revenues. And so they're trying to figure out how are they going to balance the budget. They can't, unlike Congress and the national, they can't print money. The state needs to balance their budget on this. And so we're hoping, and WCA is advocating through our lobbyists to make sure that they maintain state shared revenues for municipalities, because that would be a big hit to us if they change that. The Department of Revenue issues operating levies. They put out a calculation report that basically sets from equalized value, goes into a levy limit, and then that's what the DOR says there. So in September, we basically would meet again for a second view of the budget at finance. This is something new. August 6th, I would like to have, if the finance committee adopts this budget, I would like to have the county board review the budget on August 6th in order to give feedback one time to the finance committee. And so after that, our availability for soft dates goes away. Finance committee will have to meet on October 15th. After that, we talk to the bank about our debt levy loan on the 16th. We basically send in the notice to the papers for the public hearing on the 19th. So we basically, the 15th, if there's comments and any changes that need to be made, they're made, and then staff put together the form to basically public notice the budget in the paper. It has to go in on the 19th. It's published on the 21st of October, and then the board approves the budget on the 10th of November. After that, we close on the debt levy and receive the money, and then we certify the levy with the state after we receive the money for our debt levy. And so that's kind of our, there's a couple question marks in there, as you can see, because we don't have exact dates when the Department of Revenue will issue money and when the Department of Revenue will issue their levy calculation report. But it's important for us as a finance committee to review those numbers in totality with the rest of the budget. So with that, as we go through this, I'd like to just have this one thing be an adoption of the finance committee.
Chair Berlin, could I speak?
Oh, yes,
Um,
Laura?
Clark, with this budget and with the submission of all the different budgets from the departments, will there be narratives with those also, with goals and such stated and things that they've met?
Could you rephrase? I didn't quite understand what you said.
Sorry. With these, as the departments submit their budgets, will there be a narrative with that to show that there's been goals set, there's maybe some benchmarks that they've hit and goals for the next year with the budgets?
Obviously I wasn't here last summer, but I don't think that's the case. I mean, they just submit basically a little spreadsheet, is that correct?
That's previous. I just didn't know if the process was changing a little bit, so that way we had some narrative with it. I think some of that stuff makes it a little clearer for the public as they look at the budgets to know where we're going, what we're thinking about, and what kinds of goals that we have for in the future. I know not all the time are we able to meet those things, and sometimes it's a struggle just to have enough budget to meet our year, but I think it provides a little clarification.
So am I to understand, Laura, that you're requesting a critique of each program's budget to better identify their needs?
Yeah, I like I said, I think it helps to clarify for where their goals are and what kinds of things they'd like to see too. It also gives us a perspective on the things that we may not always see in the budget, because I know people try to put in some things and hope that we can keep all of them because there's program goals and we could always use more money. But if we know where they want to go, we can also, as a finance committee and as a board, try to help those things come to fruition. But if they're just a line item in there, it makes it a little harder to help that along.
I don't believe that's unrealistic. Pat, what you got?
Well, I've got some comments and I'll pick up with what Laura said. In around 2014 or 15, the city of Ashland started using what they called a priority-based budgeting process. And what happened then is the department heads and mayor worked together to determine the priorities of the city overall. So if one department had a capital project request and another did, what they did is they set out a timeline on which of those would get done first and how much would be allocated so that the budget could be kept, any tax increases could be kept in check, and then there was a longer term plan. So they have a 5-year financial plan. Prior to that, the council would go through every department budget line by line on everything, trying to balance the budget. And that was onerous, it was painful. So by doing priority-based budgeting, the administrator, the mayor, department heads work together to set those priorities. And I think this is what Laura is speaking to. What are the goals for the county? You know, where do roads fit in? Where does health and human services fit in? Where does just, you know, keeping taxes in check fit in? So they would work together to work through more of those details and then come to the county board and say, here are our priorities for next year, but also how those priorities fit into longer term goals that take longer to fund, such as improving the roads overall. So that was very helpful because then you see the bigger picture and you don't have department heads in a sense pitted against each other, making the case for money for their department. You have the administration, in this case, you in particular as administrator, providing leadership for the budget for the coming year, but also looking a little further down the road. So what Laura speaks to, I support looking at. And related to that are some questions that I would have that just as we go through this process. I would like information on the current debt levy so I can understand how the proposed budget fits into the current debt levy. Are there any opportunities for refinancing that might make sense given low interest rates? TIF district updates. You know, there might be some more tax revenue coming in the future. The city of Ashland, the finance director there has all the information on the TIF districts. And then the capital projects for the next 5 years, how do those fit into to the plan here so that we can see what's going on? And then I think importantly, we have to talk about what's the target change in the tax rate. For the current year, taxes went up 11.6%. What are we targeting for the coming year? You know, is it 2%, 3%, 0%? Maybe a decrease in taxes given it went up 11.6%. Because if we set a goal there, then as you work through budgets with department heads, then you'll know the finance committee is on the same page as what you're doing in terms of a proposed tax increase. And what that then means is you might say this capital project gets pushed out a little further than we were thinking, et cetera. And then, as you mentioned several times, with the levy limits, more entities, counties and cities are taking on debt to pay for things, to get things off the general levy. And that, as you said, is not sustainable. And it's not. And at some point, interest rates are going to go up. And that shift to debt levy at some point is going to be really burdensome. So how does that fit into a much longer picture on how we approach budgets in the near term? So, okay.
Thank you, Pat.
So I have a couple other things to go through on this. The first is, you know, I want to see if you're approve of this budget timeline, because this is the the first thing that we talk about is the timeline. And I would like to see an approval from the committee on the timeline.
I'll make a motion to approve the timeline.
Okay. I'll second it.
We have a motion by Pat, seconded by Marty to approve the timeline. Any discussion? I'll call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
So the second thing I was going to go over is the debt levy, because it's kind of we basically had we had to fix an issue last fall with the way the city was doing their debt levy in order to align it with the Department of Revenue standards. The county had a line of credit, and during the course of the year, if they had capital items, they would basically just put it on the line of credit, and they would make the same payment against this line of credit regardless of the debt levy. It just wasn't the way, it didn't align up. And so we line things up now, but in order to fix this is we had to basically take the amount of money we had that was on that line of credit, and we converted it to an 8-year loan with the bank. And so every year on debt levy, and now we have 7 years left, I think. And we're in a meeting. We're in a meeting. Why? Finance meeting. Okay. Sorry, that was just a sheriff. So this $286,000 is going to be with us for 7 more years, and that was basically to correct the line of credit issue we have. After that, we basically have started collecting information for the 21 debt levy. As most counties that are small are doing now, the highway department is being funded in a mix of general levy and then debt levy. So every year, and they have a 5-year capital improvement plan, they basically are buying $350,000 of equipment. The roads currently have $520,000 every year. And that is not going to be enough, because I think 5 years from now, they're going to still be $100,000. No, they're going to be $400,000 short in 5 years for their plan to stick with the improvements that we have to do. So we either have to bump that up $100,000 a year, or when we get to that point, we're just going to dump in another $400,000 onto that road in the year we replace that road. So that's a decision we'll have to make. Do we want to do it over the course of a few years, or do we want to dump it all in 1 year when we have that shortage? You can see HHS dropping a couple cars, land conservation for a truck, the sheriff department radio dispatch radio system. We need new tasers. They really want to buy them today, but we don't have enough money to buy them today. So they have to be bought next year. If we're gonna have tasers, they have to be purchased. Courthouse radio link up, and these things have not been approved, obviously. These are just talking points that we're going through the process. Eventually, you, the finance committee, will go through these, and we'll go through an individual basis and provide you with why we're talking about these things. And actually the squads, once you outfit them with the stuff, they're 93 for 2 of them actually. So this is kind of, and then, so what happens is, so you can see the bottom line here, you got $1.453 million. We basically, in order to keep interest expense down, what we do is we basically borrow the money, we receive the money the second week in December before we certify the levy with the state. Because before you certify the levy with the state, you have to have an obligation for the loan. You have to say, we actually owe this money. Not, we promise to take out the loan. We actually have the money and we actually owe the money back. And so then we have to have an amortization schedule. A one-day loan doesn't suffice. You're dancing around too much around the head of a needle. And so what other counties are doing and what I think is acceptable is we're paying it back in late February. So we're basically taking out like a 75-day loan, and then we're paying it off. And so we're not paying interest for the entire year on it. And so that basically is where we would take out this $1.53 million. We'd make the payment for the $286,000 fixed-year loan that we corrected the line of credit from before, and then we also would then put the other money into the highway money, be transferred to the highway department. The other money would be kept in our capital improvement fund to be utilized during the normal budgetary process and bidding process. And so that's just a little background on the debt levy, because it is kind of confusing for people to understand what we're talking about. And I just kind of wanted to go through that with you. I went through the packet. I basically talked about some of the, the debt levy. I talked about the general levy. I put in basically a memo from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities that talks about, explains the levy limit for people. So I would encourage people to read that. Gives greater detail of it. This is an interesting document in your packet. This is the net new construction that you'll see for our areas. And so you have, there's your county. So basically 0.9% of an increase in net new construction. The interesting thing, this law, you look at some places like the village of Butternut, they actually have a net negative value. And so when you think about trying to finance local governments on property taxes, unless you're a growing community, it's very challenging. And then I have the version of that. So in the other thing that I would like to see from the finance committee today, given the uncertainties over the timber revenue, which again is $750,000 we budget, I really doubt we're going to get that next year. I mean, maybe we might get 450, maybe 500. So there's $250,000 that we won't get in revenue that was used this year's budget to balance it. Naturally, we have other increases. We're trying to do our best to work on the COVID reimbursements to try to get as much as we can out of that to try to help to make sure we don't incur those costs next year. My recommendation to the finance committee would be that you make a motion for the department heads to come back with a zero increase budget. And then we'll put it together and we'll see where we're at from that, the expected revenues. If we see expected decreases, if we see decreases in expected revenue, we'll have to go down from a zero budget from there.
I'll make a motion that we direct the administrator to work with department heads to put together a budget with a 0% increase for the target for the coming year.
Motion by Pat,
Supervisor Negro, I will second that motion.
and we have a second by Laura. Any further discussions? I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Pat.
Thank you. And then this is, I didn't put this in your packet. You'll be seeing this at your next meeting, but this is how we're just tracking it. We have basically general expenditures on one side, revenue on the other. And we go through general government, then we go through protection, law enforcement. Then we would go through Health and Human Services. And then we go through highway. We have UW, extension. We have conservation and development. So we come down to basically total expenditures and a total revenue. So you can see last year you basically had total expenditures of around $21 million. You had revenues around 13 million. And then you basically would go through what I'm adding to the budget this year to provide more transparency is I'm going to put in transfers from funds. So like if the forestry department is going to, in the past, the forestry department has maybe bought some sort of capital equipment out of their forestry fund. It wasn't put into the budget. It was just something that was transferred out of the forestry funds. And what I want to do this year for the departments, and I don't know if I'll be able to get 100% of this correct this year, because it will be new for you, is I want to put in all the capital expenditures within the budget and then transfer from funds, from forestry, and then use of capital improvement funds, funds from debt levy, and then that will come down into our general government expenditures, and this is how we figure out the tax rates. So you can see last year we had these expenditures of 20 million. We had revenues, expected revenues, county sales tax, state computer aid, general levy ended up being, $6 million bucks, and then you had the $1.23 million in debt levy, and then we had the percentages. So this is what we're going to be building the budget on in order to present to you. So the change will be, it's more for a transparency aspect. I don't want to purchase things from a fund unless we budget it. And if we don't budget it during the year, because we're going to find things that come up that we can't budget for. That's the nature of the beast. We have a budget amendment process, which we approved at Finance Committee in like February or March. And so that goes through just following state law. If you have X percentage, basically a department head can do it. More than that, I do it. More than that, the Finance Committee does it. More than that, the county board has to do it. And so that's how we adopt, that's how we change the budget during the course of the year. This is what you will see with the CARES money, with the $259,000. If we end up claiming all of that, we're going to come back to you and say, we're going to put this in the budget as an expense and a revenue, because that way, when the auditors come back and look upon it, basically are spending budgeted money, not unallocated money.
Just on a tangent line here, on the $109,000, that's not been identified for the CARES. Do we anticipate spending all that funds that's available to us in Ashland?
Well, if we don't spend the $259,000 and seek reimbursement for it, it goes back to the state. And so we have to finish our purchases up by October 31st. we let the state know the 1st through the 15th of November what our claim is, our final claim, our total claim is. Any money left over that we don't claim, the state reallocates to hotspots within the state. And if the state doesn't do that, it goes back to the federal government, goes back to the Treasury Department. So in the macroeconomic sense, if we don't spend it, it does stay in the state. But we have to make sure that we are confident we're going to get reimbursed for these expenses, because otherwise we got to take it out of the general fund, you know. So, and the tribe obviously the tribe has it, the city has it, every little town, the townships have the minimum a township can have is $5,000. And so some of these towns are very, very small. It's $5,000, it's a big deal to them, but it has to be COVID-related expenses that weren't budgeted. So
does that mean a 0% wage increase?
yes, 0% wage increase. That was your intent, right? Zero budget, right?
Zero increased budget for 2021.
You might have just said that. The overall budget would result in a tax increase of 0%. That does not necessarily mean that wages would be 0% or benefits would be unchanged. So there could hypothetically be a wage increase, but to fund that, then there would have to be other areas of the budget, capital projects, for example, that would have less funding to support that wage increase. So the overall budget at 0%.
Are you going to cap? Because I know I'm going to get this from department heads when I send it out. Are you going to cap what they could increase somebody's wage and decrease it on the other end?
That'll be determined through the budget process. But the overall budget, so when someone gets their tax bill, they would see a 0% change. So one area of the budget might increase, another area might decrease. So just the overall budget, the bottom line would be at 0% for the county as a whole. There might be an increase in one department, there might be a decrease in another. That will all be worked through during the budget process. But the bottom line would be a 0% change in the tax rate.
Okay. But the motion was for a 0% increase. Do you want to specify over the bottom line or every department?
This is just the tax rate that the county charges on the taxes for the coming year. The details within departments, et cetera, will have to be determined through the budget process. So 0% change in the tax rate.
Is that what you want in your motion?
That's what it is.
Tax rate?
Right. And then the details that affect departments and employees will be worked through during the budget process.
Yeah, so let's say we have an increase in insurance.
Sure.
We can't control that, but that has to be balanced out against something else, because, you know, if you're going to increase that and you're going to have 0% increase, you have to be a cut somewhere else.
Yeah, and typically what also changes is retirement. And you will, I mean, because you have all your elected people, they're guaranteed, I mean, there's a resolution for their wages, so then I just know the questions are going to come back when I have.
Yeah, no, that's good, that's good.
Yeah, this is just the bottom line, those 0% changes the target. And almost assuredly, some things will increase and some things will decrease for various reasons, the insurance costs, et cetera.
And to clarify, I think that the narratives and the goal setting that Pat and I had brought up, I think that shows us where everything has been shifted to show where everybody's priorities are and what kinds of projects they need. Like I said, it makes things clear as we go through budgets and do our approvals.
I will say from my experience on the Ashland City Council, when we started using the priority-based budgeting, harder decisions had to be made in terms of what got funded and what didn't. But my sense is that through that process, when we looked harder at the allocations within the budget, that resulted in better choices in terms of the use of funds. And that resulted in a greater capacity to provide wage increases for employees and to retain staff.
I just know how they've done it for the past 25 years, and they're going to say, well, I'm going to put my budget in at this, and it's higher because somebody else can go over here. I just know how it has gone for 25 years doing this, and they're going to have a difficult time not having a definite number to go by.
Well,
but I mean, I'm not saying that change isn't a good thing. They're just going to have to run through that.
and the reason Act 10 was passed is because the majority of people in the state wanted to control tax increases on the local level. And we're 10 years on with that, and it's reached a point where there has to be real hard decisions on funding things. And that's the nature of the law, and it's the task that we have.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to get some answers for when they come to me with questions.
No, it's just the overall budget and where the, I think most elected officials do want to support the employees, and they understand trying to provide a wage increase.
No, I just,
So,
no, I'm not saying changing is a good thing. I just want to know how to answer the questions.
And as far as, a narrative with goals and vision and mission, I think one of the things, ultimately, as a policy setting board, the county board needs to set the vision and the priorities for the county. And I just got here last year. I don't know if you've ever done that before. Have they had a county board strategic planning session where they set the vision of the county?
Well, unless they discuss it at their retreat.
Okay. Yeah. And so, for me to set the priorities for the county, I don't report to the citizens. Ultimately, the county board should say what's important to them, and as a body, come up with a single message saying, here are our priorities for the citizens of this county. Because.
Just to clarify, I have looked at budgets in different counties around the state, and our neighbor Bayfield has a very good process and very clear budgets that have their narratives. I'm not talking about our departments or you setting the vision. I'm talking about they do the work with the people, and they know what kinds of things that they need, and they know what goals they have to further their services and their support for the citizens. I think that becomes more clear if they state that to us too. And the thing is and it doesn't have to be, I'm not talking research paper here. I'm talking about just a short 3 pages at the most, but going through and here's what our goals were last year. Here's what we met. Here's what kind of things we're looking forward to. Here's a little bit why. So if they put those different changes into the budget, we can go, well, there's been an increase in demand for this through them. And if we have more questions, yes, we can ask more questions on top of that. But it's nice to have that when you get the packet and you're trying to figure out, okay, this is this, this is this, this is this. Why the thing is, because we don't always hear the direct contact with the citizens that here is the big push, even though you think over here is where it is. So I think it helps clarify the services that we need and where we need to allocate those things. And some things may pop up that we don't even have on our radar as county board members. And Lori, thank you so much for your experience, because I know you take all these questions, so I find it invaluable. So don't apologize for your questions. I know you would get everybody's questions.
Thank you, Laura. Are we at the verbal update?
Yeah. Just one thing, there is county board members have mailboxes in the administrative suite. And this book came out, the Green Book, the Book of County Facts, 3rd edition. And in the back, there's a pamphlet that talks about Ashland County, and it talks about our population, our finances, and other pertinent information, and then compares us to other counties for state aids, health and human services, total spending, education attainment, veterans. So it's a great book that the county's put together, and I would encourage everybody to county board members to come down to the room and come down out and pick it up. The one interesting thing when we think about Bayfield County, they have about the same population we do. They have about $1.5 billion more in valuation and a $10 million higher budget. So when we compare what Bayfield can do as far as staff, staff resources, staff to help things, they have like a $32 million budget compared to our $21 million budget. And so we don't have nearly the capacity, even though we have the same population. That's where property taxes come into play, which is you have two counties right next to each other with $10 million difference in budget. So they can provide they can have staff do other things and have the time to do things, whereas we don't have the staff to do it because we don't have the same money. So we just wanted to point that out. And I don't have any other updates.
Thank you. Well, what's the next meeting date? Are we looking at the third Wednesday of every month for meetings, or was this just a fluke of having it third Wednesday of this month?
Let me see here.
We had some kind of thing we had to evaluate before whatever day we had picked last time, a Tuesday or something, the last Tuesday, I thought.
Yeah,
go through the budget process.
Yeah, we could set a date for the August meeting, but I can't guarantee that the budget will be put together. We would have to change it or just not review the budget. So, like I said, here's your timeline, the 20th of August. I'm hoping to get it back from the departments and other organizations. And then we hopefully get equalized value from the Department of Revenue. So, what's that last week of August look like?
Law enforcement on the 24th.
That's the public properties.
Yep.
So I did have possible finance meeting on the 27th, if that works.
Works for me.
I don't mind. I just would like to have some consistency when dealing with the public, because as someone else pointed out today, it's hard to look at the agendas if we have, okay, so this one was a fluke, like Chair Berlin said, because we needed to go through this budget process and have the timeline solidified or as solid as we could get it at this point. But if we know that the last Thursday of the month is usually a finance meeting, then the citizens can plan around that too.
I think that's what you guys decided at the last meeting, that it would be the last Thursday of the month.
I thought so. Thank you.
Okay, yep. So next meeting will be the 27th of August.
Sounds good to me. Any? What did you say, Marty? Good?
That works for me.
Pat, yeah?
Yeah.
How about you, Ron?
Yes.
Okay, with that, let's go to item number 14. Who wants to adjourn this session?
I'll
I'll make the motion. Go
Go
ahead, Pat. I'll second.
Laura, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carried.
August 27th at 9 a.m., is that correct? Yep. Thank you.